Lila Hart stood in her small apartment, the sunlight filtering through the curtains, casting a warm glow on the cluttered space. She had just finished her last exam of the semester and was ready for a break. Her phone buzzed on the table, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from Mia, her best friend since childhood. "Hey, my dad is taking us to the cabin this weekend. You in?" Lila's heart raced at the thought of spending time with Mia and her father, Ethan Thompson. He was charming, with an infectious laugh that could light up any room. Lila had always admired him, not just for his good looks but for his warmth and kindness. The idea of being around him for an entire weekend sent a thrill through her. She quickly typed back, "Absolutely. What should I bring?" Mia replied almost instantly, "Just your usual stuff. Swimwear, snacks, and your amazing playlist. Can't wait." As Lila packed her bag later that evening, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The cabin was nestled by a serene lake in the woods, a place where they had spent countless summers together. But this time felt different. Lila couldn't shake off the feeling that something significant might happen. The next day, Lila drove to the cabin, the familiar route winding through lush trees and vibrant wildflowers. As she arrived, she saw Mia waving enthusiastically from the porch. Ethan stood beside her, a welcoming smile on his face that made Lila's heart flutter. "Lila, you made it!" Mia exclaimed as she rushed to hug her. Ethan stepped forward, his arms open wide for a warm embrace. "Great to see you again, Lila. You're looking well." "Thanks, Mr. Thompson," she replied shyly, feeling a blush creep onto her cheeks. "It's good to be here." Inside the cabin, the air was filled with laughter and the aroma of freshly baked cookies. They settled into their routine quickly, swimming in the lake during the day and playing games at night. Lila felt comfortable with Mia and Ethan, but there was an undercurrent of tension that she couldn't quite place. On the second evening, after a long day of hiking and swimming, Ethan suggested they unwind in the sauna. "It'll be relaxing after all that exercise," he said with a grin. Mia looked at Lila with excitement. "Come on, it'll be fun." Lila hesitated for a moment, she had never been in a sauna before. But the thought of spending more time with Ethan was too tempting to resist. "Okay, I'm in." They changed into their swimsuits and headed to the sauna outside, its wooden structure nestled among tall pine trees. As they entered, the heat enveloped them like a warm blanket. Lila settled onto one of the benches next to Mia while Ethan sat across from them. The steam began to rise as they chatted about everything from school to summer plans. Lila felt her inhibitions melting away along with the heat surrounding them. She caught glimpses of Ethan through the haze. His relaxed demeanor and easy smile made her heart race. "Do you remember that time we got lost hiking?" Mia asked, laughter bubbling up as she recalled a past adventure. "Oh my God, yes. We ended up at that weird campsite," Lila replied, joining in on the laughter. As their stories flowed freely amidst the steam, Lila found herself stealing glances at Ethan more often than not. There was something about his presence that made her feel safe yet exhilarated at the same time. Suddenly, as they shared another laugh, Ethan leaned forward slightly, causing their eyes to meet for an electric moment that seemed to linger longer than it should have. Lila's breath caught in her throat as she felt an undeniable connection forming between them. Mia continued talking about their plans for tomorrow, oblivious to the charged atmosphere between her father and best friend. But Lila could feel it, a spark igniting in that small sauna filled with laughter and warmth. As they sat there together, three friends sharing stories, the world outside faded away. In that moment of intimacy and connection, Lila realized she was starting to see Ethan not just as Mia's dad but as someone who stirred feelings within her that were both thrilling and terrifying. The evening continued with more laughter and stories until they finally decided to leave the sauna behind for cooler air outside. But as Lila stepped out into the night air, she knew something had shifted within her, an awakening of emotions she hadn't anticipated. The weekend had just begun, but already it felt like it would change everything. The next morning, Lila awoke to the soft sound of birds chirping outside her window. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. She stretched and took a moment to gather her thoughts, still feeling the lingering warmth from the sauna and the unexpected connection she had felt with Ethan. After a quick shower, Lila dressed in her favorite swimsuit, a vibrant blue one-piece that accentuated her figure. She wanted to feel confident today. As she made her way to the kitchen, the delicious smell of pancakes wafted through the air, making her stomach growl. "Good morning," Mia called out cheerfully as Lila entered. She was already seated at the table, a stack of pancakes piled high in front of her. "Morning. Wow, those look amazing," Lila replied, taking a seat across from Mia. Ethan was busy flipping more pancakes on the griddle, his back turned to them. "Just wait until you taste them," Mia said with a grin. "Dad's secret recipe." Ethan turned around, a spatula in hand and a playful smile on his face. "You girls ready to eat? I hope you're hungry because I made enough for an army." They dug into breakfast, laughter filling the kitchen as they shared stories about their favorite summer memories. Lila felt at ease, but there was an undercurrent of excitement buzzing beneath her skin, an anticipation that today would bring something new. After breakfast, Ethan suggested they spend the day by the lake. "The weather is perfect for swimming and sunbathing," he said, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Mia jumped up from her chair. "Let's go. I want to show Lila my new diving skills." Lila laughed, feeling a rush of happiness at Mia's energy. They gathered their things, towels, sunscreen, and snacks, and headed down to the lake. The water shimmered under the bright sun, inviting them in. As they arrived at the shore, Lila couldn't help but admire how beautiful everything looked. The tall trees lining the water's edge, the gentle waves lapping against the rocks, and the clear blue sky overhead. It felt like paradise. Mia wasted no time, she sprinted toward the water and dove in with a splash. Lila followed suit, feeling the cool water envelop her as she swam out to join her friend. Ethan watched from the shore, laughing at their antics. "Come on in. The water's great," Mia called out to him. Ethan hesitated for just a moment before he joined them, splashing into the lake with an infectious joy that made Lila's heart race even faster. They spent hours swimming, playing games, and enjoying each other's company. At one point, while floating on their backs and gazing up at the clouds, Lila felt a rush of contentment wash over her. It was in these simple moments that she realized how much she cherished being here with Mia and Ethan. Later in the afternoon, they decided to take a break from swimming and laid out on towels under the sun. Mia pulled out a deck of cards and suggested they play some games while soaking up the rays. As they played, laughter echoed around them. Lila found herself stealing glances at Ethan when he wasn't looking. His relaxed demeanor in his swim trunks made him look effortlessly handsome. She felt a mix of admiration and something deeper stirring inside her. "Hey, no cheating," Mia exclaimed suddenly when she caught Lila trying to sneak a peek at Ethan's cards. Lila laughed nervously, trying to play it off. "I swear I wasn't cheating. Just admiring your dad's skills." Ethan chuckled and leaned closer to Lila. "You know what they say about card games, always keep your poker face." Their eyes met again for a fleeting moment that sent butterflies swirling in Lila's stomach. She quickly looked away, trying to focus on the game instead of how close they were sitting or how his presence seemed to fill every space around her. As evening approached, they packed up their things and headed back to the cabin. The sun dipped low in the sky, painting it with hues of orange and pink that reflected beautifully on the lake's surface. Once inside, Ethan suggested they have a barbecue for dinner. "I'll handle the grill, you two can set up everything else," he said confidently. Mia and Lila worked together in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and preparing sides while exchanging excited glances about how much fun they had that day. When dinner was ready and they gathered around the table outside under string lights that twinkled like stars above them, it felt magical. They shared stories over burgers and grilled corn. Laughter came easily as they reminisced about their childhood adventures. As night fell and darkness enveloped them like a cozy blanket, Ethan leaned back in his chair and looked at both girls with warmth in his eyes. "I'm really glad you're here this weekend," he said sincerely. Lila felt her heart swell at his words. It was clear he valued their company just as much as she did his. After dinner, they decided to sit by the fire pit outside. The flames crackled softly as they roasted marshmallows for s'mores, a classic summer treat that brought back fond memories for all three of them. As Lila sat between Mia and Ethan by the firelight, she couldn't shake off how right it felt being there with them, how natural it was to laugh together and share stories under the stars. But deep down inside her heart lay an unspoken truth: every moment spent with Ethan only intensified her feelings for him. The connection they shared was undeniable, it was thrilling yet terrifying all at once. As darkness enveloped them further into night, Lila knew tomorrow would bring more adventures, and perhaps more revelations about herself and what this weekend truly meant for her. The sun rose the next morning, casting a golden light across the cabin and the lake beyond. Lila stirred awake, feeling a sense of anticipation that had been building since yesterday. She quickly dressed in her favorite sundress, a light floral pattern that danced around her legs as she moved. After brushing her hair and splashing some water on her face, she headed out to find Mia and Ethan. The aroma of coffee wafted through the air as Lila entered the kitchen. Ethan stood at the counter, pouring steaming mugs for himself and Mia, who was still half asleep, her hair tousled and eyes barely open. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Ethan teased as Mia rubbed her eyes. "Morning. Did you make pancakes again?" Mia asked, a hopeful tone in her voice. "Not this time. I thought we'd try something different. How about breakfast burritos?" Ethan replied with a grin. Lila's stomach growled at the mention of food. "That sounds amazing," she said, taking a seat at the table. As they ate, Lila felt a warmth spreading through her. The easy banter between Mia and Ethan made her smile. They were so comfortable with each other, and Lila couldn't help but admire how effortlessly they connected. But beneath that admiration lay a growing awareness of her own feelings for Ethan, a mix of excitement and confusion that left her restless. After breakfast, they decided to take advantage of the beautiful weather and explore the nearby hiking trails. Lila felt a thrill of excitement as they packed their backpacks with water bottles and snacks. The thought of spending time outdoors with both Mia and Ethan sent butterflies fluttering in her stomach. The hike began easily enough, with laughter echoing through the trees as they made their way along the trail. Lila walked beside Ethan, their shoulders occasionally brushing against each other. Each touch sent an electric jolt through her, making it hard to concentrate on anything else. "Did I ever tell you about the time Mia and I got lost on this trail?" Ethan asked, glancing down at Lila with a playful smile. "No. What happened?" Lila leaned in closer, intrigued. Mia rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh please. Dad likes to exaggerate everything." Ethan chuckled. "Okay, maybe I do embellish a bit. But we really did get lost for hours. We ended up having to follow some random hikers back to the main path." Lila laughed along with them, enjoying the lightheartedness of their conversation. As they continued hiking, she found herself stealing glances at Ethan more often. His laughter was contagious, his enthusiasm infectious. After an hour of hiking, they reached a stunning overlook that revealed a breathtaking view of the valley below. The landscape stretched out before them like a painting, rolling hills dotted with trees and wildflowers under a bright blue sky. "Wow," Lila breathed, taking it all in. "This is incredible." Mia joined her at the edge, beaming with pride. "Isn't it? We used to come here every summer." Ethan stood behind them, his presence warm and reassuring. "It's one of my favorite spots too," he said softly. As they took pictures and admired the scenery, Lila felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over her. This moment felt perfect, surrounded by nature and two people she cared about deeply. After some time spent soaking in the view, Mia suggested they find a spot to have lunch. They hiked down a little further until they found a shaded area near a babbling brook. They spread out their picnic blanket and unpacked their food, sandwiches, fruit, and chips, and settled down to eat. As they enjoyed their lunch, laughter filled the air once again. Lila felt lighter than she had in weeks. It was as if all her worries had melted away in this beautiful setting. But as she glanced at Ethan, across the blanket, his eyes sparkling in the sunlight, she couldn't ignore the fluttering sensation in her chest. After lunch, Mia suggested they play a game of Would You Rather. It was one of their favorite pastimes from childhood that always led to hilarious conversations. "Okay, I'll start," Mia said eagerly. "Would you rather have the ability to fly or be invisible?" "I'd definitely choose to fly," Lila said without hesitation. "Imagine soaring above everything." Ethan laughed. "Flying would be amazing, but I think I'd choose invisibility. Think of all the places you could sneak into." Mia rolled her eyes playfully. "You just want to eavesdrop on people." As they continued playing this light-hearted game, Lila found herself increasingly drawn to Ethan's playful side. The way he interacted with Mia reminded her of how much fun it was just to be around him. Yet there was still an underlying tension that seemed to linger whenever their eyes met. After several rounds of laughter and silly scenarios, Mia suggested they take a dip in the brook to cool off from their hike. Come on. It'll be refreshing, she urged. Lila hesitated for just a moment. She hadn't planned on getting wet today but couldn't resist Mia's enthusiasm, or the idea of being near Ethan in such an intimate setting. All right, let's do it. Lila finally agreed with a grin. They all jumped into the cool water together, laughter echoing off the rocks as splashes flew everywhere. The brook was shallow but refreshing. They waded through it while trying to dodge each other's playful attacks. At one point, Lila found herself standing face to face with Ethan in the water. Their eyes locked for what felt like an eternity, a moment suspended in time where everything else faded away. She could feel her heart racing as he smiled at her. There was something unspoken between them that made everything feel charged with possibility. Just then, Mia splashed water between them playfully, breaking the spell and causing both of them to laugh uncontrollably. But even amidst all the fun, Lila couldn't shake off how right it felt being close to Ethan, like there was something more waiting just beneath the surface. As they finally climbed out of the brook and dried off under the sun's warm rays, Lila knew that today had shifted something within her heart, a realization that maybe this weekend held more than just friendship for her and Ethan. The day continued with more laughter and adventure until they finally made their way back to the cabin as dusk began to settle in around them. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting everything in shades of orange and purple, a perfect end to an unforgettable day. As they sat on the porch later that evening watching fireflies dance in the twilight air, Lila felt hopeful about what tomorrow might bring, the promise of new connections and deeper feelings lingering just beyond reach. The next morning, Lila woke up with a sense of anticipation that made her heart race. The events of the previous day lingered in her mind, the laughter, the playful splashes in the brook, and especially the moments shared with Ethan that felt charged with an unspoken connection. She dressed quickly, throwing on a comfortable tank top and shorts before heading out to find Mia and Ethan. As she stepped onto the porch, the sun was already high in the sky, casting a warm glow over the cabin. Mia was sitting at the picnic table, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. "Good morning," Lila called out, her voice cheerful despite the nervous energy buzzing inside her. "Morning. Ready for another adventure?" Mia replied, looking up with a bright smile. "Absolutely. What's on the agenda today?" Lila asked, trying to keep her tone light. Ethan emerged from inside the cabin, a towel draped over his shoulder. "How about some kayaking on the lake? It's perfect weather for it." Lila's heart skipped a beat at the thought of spending more time with Ethan on the water. "That sounds amazing," she exclaimed. After breakfast, they gathered their gear and made their way to the kayaks stored by the lake. Lila felt a rush of excitement as they loaded everything into the small boat trailer. The sun glistened on the water's surface, inviting them to explore its depths. Ethan helped Mia into one kayak while Lila climbed into another. "You ready?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Ready as I'll ever be," Lila replied, trying to sound confident even though she felt a flutter of nerves. Once they were all settled, Ethan pushed off first, guiding his kayak smoothly across the water. Lila followed closely behind, glancing over at him every chance she got. The way he maneuvered his kayak with ease made it look effortless. He was in his element out here. As they paddled along, Mia called out from her kayak, "Let's race to that island over there." "On 3, Ethan shouted back, excitement evident in his voice. 1, 2, 3. They all began paddling furiously toward the small island in the distance. Lila felt adrenaline coursing through her veins as she pushed herself harder, determined to keep up with Ethan. The water splashed around her as she focused on him ahead, his strong strokes propelling him forward effortlessly. In that moment, it felt like everything else faded away. It was just her and Ethan racing across the lake. She could hear Mia cheering them on from behind, but all Lila could focus on was Ethan's laughter ringing through the air. As they reached the island first, Ethan jumped out of his kayak and waded through shallow water to shore. "Victory!" he declared triumphantly. Lila laughed breathlessly as she joined him on land. "You're too fast." Mia caught up moments later, panting but grinning from ear to ear. "I can't believe you guys beat me." They spent some time exploring the small island, climbing over rocks and taking pictures of each other against the stunning backdrop of trees and blue sky. Lila felt alive in this moment. Every laugh shared seemed to bring her closer to Ethan. After a while, they settled down on a patch of grass under a large tree for a break. The gentle breeze rustled through the leaves above them as they enjoyed snacks and shared stories about their childhood adventures. At one point during their break, Mia leaned back against the tree trunk and closed her eyes. "This is perfect," she sighed contentedly. Lila glanced over at Ethan, who was watching Mia with an affectionate smile. It was clear how much he cared for his daughter. That warmth only made Lila's feelings for him grow stronger. "Hey, Lila," Ethan said suddenly, breaking her thoughts. "What do you think about this place? It's been our family getaway for years." "It's beautiful," she replied sincerely. "I can see why you love it here." He smiled at her response, a genuine smile that made her heart flutter again. "I'm glad you're here with us this weekend." Lila felt a rush of warmth at his words. It meant so much to hear him say that. It made everything feel more real between them. As they finished their snacks and prepared to head back to their kayaks, Lila felt a twinge of anxiety creeping in. She had been trying to ignore her feelings for Ethan all weekend, trying to convince herself that it was just admiration, but deep down she knew it was more than that. Once back in their kayaks and paddling toward home, Lila struggled with how to express what she was feeling without ruining everything between them. Her friendship with Mia and their growing bond with Ethan weighed heavily on her mind. When they finally reached shore and pulled their kayaks onto land, Mia suggested they take a quick dip in the lake before heading back to the cabin for lunch. Lila hesitated but ultimately agreed. Maybe swimming would help clear her head. As they splashed around in the water again, laughter echoed off the shore once more. But even amidst all this fun, Lila couldn't shake off how close she felt to Ethan. How every glance exchanged seemed charged with something deeper than friendship. After drying off and changing into fresh clothes back at the cabin, Lila found herself alone in her room for a moment of quiet reflection. She sat on her bed and took a deep breath. She needed to figure out what she truly wanted before this weekend came to an end. But just as she began to gather her thoughts, there was a knock at her door. It opened slightly as Ethan peeked in with an easy smile that made her heart race again. "Hey, I thought I'd check if you're ready for lunch," he said casually. "Yeah, just give me a second," Lila replied quickly as she stood up and smoothed down her dress nervously. As they walked together toward the kitchen where Mia was already preparing sandwiches, Lila couldn't help but feel that this weekend held something special, a chance for connection beyond what they had known before. But would she have the courage to embrace those feelings? Only time would tell as they continued navigating this delicate balance between friendship and something more profound. The afternoon sun poured through the cabin windows as Lila helped Mia prepare lunch. The smell of fresh bread and deli meats filled the air, but Lila's mind was elsewhere, swirling with thoughts about Ethan. She had spent the morning trying to sort through her feelings, but every time she glanced at him, her heart raced, and her thoughts scattered. "Are you okay?" Mia asked suddenly, breaking Lila from her reverie. "You've been a little quiet today." "Yeah, I'm fine," Lila replied, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about how much fun we've had this weekend." Mia raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "You sure? You seem distracted." "I promise, I'm good," Lila insisted, though inside she felt a storm brewing. She couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to talk to Ethan about what was happening between them. But how could she do that without jeopardizing her friendship with Mia? After lunch, they decided to take a break and relax on the porch. The sound of birds chirping and the gentle rustle of leaves created a peaceful backdrop as they settled into their chairs. Ethan joined them with a cold drink in hand, his presence instantly making Lila's heart skip a beat. "Anyone up for a game of cards?" he suggested, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Sure, what do you have in mind?" Mia replied eagerly. "Let's play some poker," Ethan said with a grin. "But be warned, I'm pretty good at bluffing." As they played, laughter filled the air once more. Lila found herself caught up in the fun, but every time she looked at Ethan, she felt that familiar tension pulling at her heartstrings. The way he leaned forward in his chair, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, it all made her pulse quicken. Halfway through the game, Ethan leaned closer to Lila as he played his hand. "You're not going to let me win that easily, are you?" he teased. Lila felt warmth flooding her cheeks as their eyes met. "Not a chance," she replied confidently, trying to mask her racing heart. As the game continued, Lila's mind drifted back to the sauna, the way their hands had brushed against each other and how everything had felt so charged in that moment. She knew she had to confront these feelings before it was too late. After finishing their game and clearing away the cards and snacks, Mia suggested they take a walk down by the lake. It's such a beautiful day, we should enjoy it while we can. She exclaimed. Lila nodded enthusiastically but felt a knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. This could be her chance to talk to Ethan alone. As they strolled along the water's edge, Mia chatted excitedly about their plans for the rest of the weekend, but Lila's focus was on finding an opening to speak with Ethan. Eventually, Mia wandered ahead to explore some wildflowers growing along the shore. Lila seized the moment and turned to Ethan, who was walking beside her. Ethan, she began hesitantly, can we talk for a minute? He looked at her curiously but nodded. Of course, what's on your mind? They stepped away from Mia and found a quiet spot under a large tree overlooking the lake. The sound of water lapping against the shore created an intimate atmosphere that made Lila's heart race even more. I've been thinking about this weekend, she started slowly, trying to gather her thoughts. About us. Ethan tilted his head slightly, his expression attentive and patient. What do you mean? Lila took a deep breath, feeling vulnerable yet determined. I know we've always been friends, me and Mia, and I care about both of you so much. But I can't help feeling like there's something more between us. Ethan's eyes widened slightly as he processed her words. Lila, I know this might be confusing, she rushed on, feeling anxious now that she had opened this door. But ever since we were in the sauna together and even during our time here, I just feel this connection with you that I can't ignore. For a moment, silence hung in the air between them as Ethan searched her face for understanding. Finally, he spoke softly, I've felt it too. Lila's heart soared at his admission. Really? You mean it? Yeah, he said with a small smile that made her pulse quicken again. I didn't know how to approach it either, especially with Mia being your best friend. I don't want to hurt her, Lila admitted quietly. Ethan nodded thoughtfully. Neither do I. But I think it's important we acknowledge what's happening between us. As they stood there beneath the tree with sunlight filtering through the leaves above them, Lila felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over her. They were both on the same page, they both felt this undeniable connection. Just then, Mia called out from a distance, breaking their moment of intimacy. Hey, you two coming? There are some really cool rocks over here. Lila glanced back at Ethan, their eyes met again with unspoken understanding, their conversation wasn't over yet. Let's go, Ethan said cheerfully as they walked back toward Mia together. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of laughter and exploration as they wandered along the lake's edge and climbed over rocks together. But now there was an added layer of excitement for Lila, an unspoken promise lingering between her and Ethan that made everything feel different. As evening approached and they returned to the cabin for dinner preparations, Lila couldn't shake off how lighthearted she felt knowing that they were both aware of their feelings now. After dinner and another round of s'mores by the fire pit under a blanket of stars, Lila felt hopeful about what tomorrow might bring, the possibility of exploring this new chapter together while still cherishing her friendship with Mia. The sun rose on the final day of their weekend getaway, casting a warm, golden light across the cabin and the lake. Lila woke up with a mixture of excitement and nervousness swirling inside her. Last night's conversation with Ethan had left her heart racing, and she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. After getting dressed, Lila stepped outside to find Ethan already sitting on the porch, sipping coffee and gazing out at the shimmering water. He looked relaxed and content, but Lila could see a hint of anticipation in his eyes as he turned to greet her. Good morning, he called out, his smile making her heart flutter. Morning, sleep well? Lila asked, taking a seat next to him. Yeah, surprisingly well, Ethan replied. I think I finally got used to the sounds of nature out here. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the sounds of birds chirping and leaves rustling creating a peaceful backdrop. But Lila's mind was racing with thoughts of how to navigate this new dynamic between them. She wanted to explore their connection further but also knew they had to be careful around Mia. Have you thought about what we talked about yesterday? Ethan asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Lila nodded, feeling her heart race again. I have. I don't want to hurt Mia. She means so much to me. Ethan looked thoughtful. I get that. We should talk to her about it when the time feels right. I think she'll understand that our feelings are genuine. Lila appreciated his perspective, it made her feel more at ease knowing he was considering Mia's feelings too. Yeah, I hope so. After breakfast, they decided to take one last adventure together before heading home. Mia suggested hiking up to a nearby viewpoint that overlooked the entire lake, a place they had visited many times before. As they hiked along the familiar trail, Lila felt a sense of nostalgia wash over her. The laughter and memories shared here with Mia and Ethan were precious to her, but now there was an added layer of complexity that made everything feel different. When they reached the viewpoint, the breathtaking view took Lila's breath away once again. The lake sparkled under the sun like 1,000 diamonds scattered across its surface. They all stood in awe for a moment, soaking in the beauty around them. "This is why I love it here," Mia said, turning to face them with a wide smile. "It's so peaceful." Lila glanced at Ethan beside her. He was looking at Mia with pride and affection. In that moment, she felt grateful for their friendship but also aware of how much she wanted to explore something deeper with him. As they settled down on a large rock to enjoy their packed lunch, Lila felt a mix of emotions swirling within her, excitement about what lay ahead and anxiety about how to approach Mia. After they finished eating and chatting about their plans for the upcoming school year, Lila took a deep breath. "Mia," she began hesitantly, "there's something we need to talk about." Mia looked up from her spot on the rock, her expression curious. "What is it?" Lila exchanged glances with Ethan before continuing. "It's about me and your dad, Ethan." Mia's eyes widened slightly as she processed Lila's words. "What do you mean?" Ethan spoke up gently. "We've developed feelings for each other over this weekend." Lila held her breath as she watched Mia's reaction unfold. For a moment, there was silence as Mia looked between them in surprise. Wow," Mia finally said, clearly taken aback but also contemplative. "I didn't see that coming." "We didn't either," Lila admitted quickly. "But it just happened naturally between us." Mia took a deep breath and leaned back against the rock, processing everything. "I appreciate you both being honest with me," she said slowly. "It's just weird for me to think about my best friend dating my dad." "I understand," Ethan replied softly. "But I care about both of you deeply and would never want to hurt either of you." After what felt like an eternity of silence, Mia finally nodded slowly. "Okay, I think I can handle this." Her voice was steady but filled with emotion. Lila felt relief wash over her as she realized Mia was accepting their feelings rather than rejecting them outright. "Thank you for understanding," Lila said earnestly. "I just want you both to be happy," Mia replied with a small smile that eased some of Lila's tension. As they sat together in that breathtaking spot overlooking the lake, Lila felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for their friendship. The bond they shared was strong enough to weather this new chapter in their lives. After their heartfelt conversation, they spent some time enjoying each other's company again, taking pictures against the stunning backdrop and reminiscing about past adventures together. When it was finally time to head back down the trail toward the cabin for packing up, Lila felt lighter than she had all weekend. The weight of uncertainty had lifted. They were stepping into something new together while still cherishing their friendships. As they loaded up their car and prepared for the drive home, Ethan leaned over toward Lila as she settled into her seat beside him. "I'm really glad we talked," he said quietly, his eyes warm with sincerity. "Me too," she replied softly, feeling butterflies in her stomach again as their fingers brushed against each other while adjusting their seatbelts. The drive home was filled with laughter and music as they reminisced about their favorite moments from the weekend, every shared glance between Lila and Ethan charged with promise for what lay ahead. As they pulled away from the cabin one last time, Lila looked back at the place that had held so many cherished memories, and now new ones yet to come. She knew this weekend had changed everything for them all. It was just the beginning of exploring deeper feelings while navigating friendships in ways they hadn't anticipated. And as she sat next to Ethan on that drive home, his presence beside her feeling more comforting than ever, she couldn't help but feel excited for what awaited them on this journey together.